the point is that the tusk itself is difficult to retrieve intact. Basically, when the protein that holds this together begins to dissolve away, especially in acidic water, all these little cleavage lines begin to spall and pull the concentric lamellae from the center on out go, and then the vertical sort of radial planes begin to spall, and it turns quickly into a bunch of piano keys or something of that sort. It's very difficult to get tusks put back once they begin to pull apart. If we can preserve them by using the correct temperature and moisture conditions and get them to hold together, then we can harden them in place. This site has produced a really beautiful example. We have actually done very little to preserve this tusk, but it has held together wonderfully. The last meter length here, right down to the natural tip, is virtually perfect. The outer cement that helps hold this in the socket in the skull is still obvious, and so you can sort of see where this tusk begins to vanish up into the skull. And it's an extremely long, extremely beautiful tusk. The total, when we piece the remainder back together, will be about 8 feet long, nearly 3 meters. Natural wear here, a certain amount of corrosion in the river opening up a few cracks, but it stayed intact. The beauty of a tusk is that you can read much of the animal's entire history from either the cross section, in which you can see growth annually, and you can take sections of that, grind them down, and look at the thin section under a microscope and see little growth rings, even daily, monthly, and certainly annual. And it's the same going down the length. It's pretty subtle, but in the right light I could see individual little ribs and valleys, ridges and valleys coming along like this. The most obvious one is right here, in which this tusk had a very good spring, presumably spring, growth, and it grew fast and bulky. And then it had, perhaps right after that, a very hard winter, and so it's contracted and grew very slow. And similar, ridge, valley. This is probably one very, very strong growth year from there to there. Another there. In the right light, I can see these annual ridges coming along the life of this tusk. And so we're seeing really the entire recorded history of the life of this animal. As a mature adult, it could be 50 years or more of age. It's probably a male. It probably had some very good growth years, especially at about maturity when it was growing to maximum size, or in its, let's say, late teenage years. At especially the refined level with microscopic sections, you can tell an awful lot about one individual, and then even better would be putting several of these individuals from one site together and looking at them as a population, perhaps males, females, older and younger individuals. So tusks are probably one of our finest records of paleo life in Florida. To spin the rest of his yarn is that the last layer on the outside gives him the month of death.
This enamel? Or
Yeah,
this, it's not enamel, it's
really
shiny,
cement, yeah.
Shiny.
But it's really under that. The last little increment, if you had a section of this, the last increment that... And then this one especially is important. And then coming on up to this one right there is the...
And I'll go back to the first one. Yeah.
Okay, that one especially. And that is very significant, big growth.